Honolulu, Hawaii, 2015. Locals have long respected the waters off Oahu's North Shore for their unpredictable currents and diverse marine life. Hawaiian mythology speaks of these seas as the domain of Kanaloa, the god of the ocean, who demanded reverence from those who entered his realm. By the early 21st century, the area had become a critical training ground for the U.S. Coast Guard's most elite rescue swimmers, who practiced recovery operations in conditions that mimicked real-world emergencies. Lieutenant Evan Hall, a 32-year-old rescue specialist with 8 years of service, had completed over 200 training dives in Hawaiian waters. Evan, the son of a Navy SEAL and an emergency room nurse from Annapolis, graduated at the top of his class and earned a reputation for remaining calm under extreme pressure. His commanding officers had recently recommended him for advancement to training coordinator, citing his methodical approach and commitment to safety protocols. On September 12, 2015, Evan's team conducted a simulated helicopter rescue operation approximately 3 kilometers off the North Shore. The exercise involved recovering weighted dummies from a submerged training apparatus designed to mimic a downed aircraft. Weather conditions were optimal with clear visibility and minimal swell, though satellite data later revealed an unusual warm water current had shifted into the area overnight. Training logs indicated that at 10:43 a.m., Evans signaled completion of his recovery portion and began ascending to check his equipment before the next phase of the exercise. His diving partner, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Riley, had moved approximately 20 meters away to secure a loose tether on the training apparatus. Unbeknownst to the Coast Guard team, a local fishing vessel named Ka Pilikai had been operating in adjacent waters earlier that morning. The boat's waste disposal system had malfunctioned, releasing approximately 40 pounds of fish, remains and entrails into the surrounding waters. Ocean current patterns had carried this biological matter directly into the training zone, creating what marine biologists later described as a feeding stimulus cloud that extended through the water column. As Evan reached his mid-water checkpoint at approximately 15 meters depth, a 4-meter female tiger shark, later identified by its distinctive markings, emerged from deeper water. According to Riley's official statement, there was no circling behavior or investigatory approach. The predator moved with singular purpose, striking Evan across his upper back and left shoulder with such force that the impact was audible through the water. The initial bite severed muscle tissue and fractured Evan's scapula, releasing a significant blood plume. Training Officer Lieutenant Commander Aisha Washington, monitoring the support vessel, reported that surface water visibility deteriorated almost instantly as crimson spread through the blue. Responding to Evan's distress signal, Riley employed his emergency bang stick, a specialized underwater firearm for precisely such scenarios. The percussive blast temporarily deterred the shark, creating a 20-second window during which Riley and secondary support diver Petty Officer Jesse Torres secured Evan with a rescue harness and began emergency ascent. Medical logs from the support vessel documented severe tissue damage extending from Evan's left deltoid region across his trapezius muscles to his spine. The bite had missed his carotid artery by less than 2 centimeters, a margin that attending physician Dr. Lauren Kikoa later described as the difference between a severe injury and a fatality. Emergency medical protocols were implemented immediately, with pressure bandages applied and intravenous fluids established before helicopter evacuation to a medical center. Surgical teams worked 7 hours to repair the damage, requiring 12 pints of transfused blood and over 400 sutures. The medical report noted that while the shark's teeth had caused extensive soft tissue trauma, they had remarkably spared major nerve clusters that would have resulted in permanent paralysis of the left arm. The Coast Guard investigation that followed identified multiple contributing factors. The proximity of commercial fishing to military training zones was highlighted as a primary concern, along with inadequate communication between maritime operations and shared waters. The report also noted that the team's shark deterrent devices, sonic emitters designed to create an uncomfortable sensory experience for approaching predators, had been operating at reduced capacity due to battery degradation. Evans survived but faced 18 months of intensive rehabilitation. The incident resulted in major protocol revisions for all Coast Guard diving operations, including mandatory daily surveys of local fishing activities, enhanced wildlife deterrent systems, and the implementation of real-time biological matter sensors on all training apparatus. In a development that surprised his medical team, Evan returned to limited diving duty in late 2017, though never again in open ocean conditions. He accepted a position as a training instructor at the Coast Guard facility in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where he incorporated his experience into safety briefings for new rescue swimmers. The tiger shark, identified by its scar patterns as a known resident female nicknamed Makani by local researchers, continued to be spotted occasionally in North Shore waters but was never again associated with human interactions. Marine biologists used tracking data from the incident to enhance predictive models of shark behavior in response to sudden introductions of biological attractants, research that has since been incorporated into standard maritime safety guidelines throughout the Pacific region. San Clemente Island, California, 2011. Positioned 75 kilometers off the Southern California coast, San Clemente Island had served as a U.S. Navy training facility since 1934. The island's isolated location and diverse underwater topography made it ideal for naval exercises, particularly sonar testing and maritime response drills. The surrounding waters, part of a convergence zone where cold northern currents met warmer southern flows, created an ecosystem rich in marine life, including seasonal populations of great white sharks that migrated through the channel waters. On April 17, 2011, a six-person crew from the Naval Undersea Warfare Center was conducting routine tests of a new mid-frequency active sonar system designed to improve submarine detection capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Rajiv Patel led the team aboard a 7-meter rigid hull inflatable boat designated Poseidon III. Weather conditions were optimal with light winds and minimal wave activity, though water visibility was limited due to a recent plankton bloom. The test protocol involved deploying sonar arrays at varying depths while measuring acoustic reflection patterns. According to mission logs, the team had completed 3 successful test runs and was preparing for a 4th, when sonar operator Petty Officer Dominique Westbrook reported an unusual reading approximately 30 meters from their position. The signature was initially registered as geological, possibly a submerged rock formation, but it demonstrated movement inconsistent with known patterns. At 14:22, Ensign Zachary Thornton spotted a large dorsal fin circling the vessel. The officer on deck, Lieutenant Melissa Cortez, ordered immediate cessation of sonar testing and directed the crew to maintain observation positions. Marine wildlife encounters were common in the area, and standard protocol dictated non-interference unless safety was compromised. The shark, later identified through video analysis as a mature female great white approximately 5.8 meters in length, initially maintained what marine biologists term investigatory circling, a behavior typically observed when these predators encounter unfamiliar objects. The situation escalated at 14:27 when the shark abruptly changed course and rammed the starboard side of the RHIB with considerable force. The impact, recorded by the vessel's mounted cameras, temporarily elevated the port side approximately 40 centimeters out of the water. After a brief retreat, the shark returned, executing a more powerful strike against the hull. This collision created a partial breach scenario, lifting the RHIB nearly 70 degrees from its horizontal position and ejecting 2 crew members into the water. Petty officers Marcus Delgado and Tyler Washington found themselves approximately 4 meters from the vessel in water, which was later measured at 17 degrees Celsius. Lieutenant Cortez immediately initiated man-overboard protocols while Chief Petty Officer Sandra Okafor prepared rescue lines. According to witness statements, Delgado began swimming directly toward the extended rescue equipment. At this critical juncture, the shark changed focus from the vessel to the displaced sailors. The predator accelerated toward Delgado and struck from below, its jaws clamping onto his lower back and left hip. The force pulled him underwater for approximately 3 seconds before he resurfaced, visibly injured and struggling to remain afloat. Okafor, trained in emergency response, deployed the RHIB's acoustic deterrent system, specialized equipment that emits concentrated sound pulses designed to overwhelm sensitive shark sensory organs. Simultaneously, Lieutenant Cortez fired a marine flare into the water near the interaction zone, creating a disorienting light-sound combination that marine experts later credited with interrupting the attack sequence. The disoriented shark retreated temporarily, creating a 20-second window during which Washington reached the rescue line and secured a harness around the injured Delgado. The team executed a rapid retrieval, bringing both sailors aboard despite the RHIB's compromised stability. Medical logs documented that Delgado had sustained a bite wound approximately 47 centimeters in diameter, with significant tissue loss from his lower lumbar region and gluteal muscles. Lieutenant Commander Patel immediately radioed for emergency evacuation, while Okafor, who had combat medic training, applied pressure dressings and administered emergency plasma. A Navy SH-60 Seahawk helicopter arrived within 18 minutes and airlifted Delgado to Naval Medical Center San Diego, where he underwent 9 hours of reconstructive surgery. The incident investigation determined that the sonar testing had likely produced frequencies that mimic the distress signals of the shark's natural prey, potentially triggering its aggressive response. The tested equipment operated within a range that overlapped with the biological sonar used by various marine mammal species that great whites occasionally hunt. Experts theorized that the shark had initially interpreted the sonar pulses as injured prey, then redirected its predatory focus to the sailors when they entered the water. The Navy subsequently implemented significant protocol changes for open water testing operations, including mandatory shark spotters during all Pacific exercises, enhanced biological monitoring before deployment of sonic equipment, and upgraded personal protective gear for all personnel on exposed vessels. Delgado survived but faced a 2-year rehabilitation process. He later received the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for his composure during the incident, which training officers incorporated into maritime emergency response curricula at the Naval Special Warfare Command. The shark, identified through distinctive scarring as a known channel migrant, nicknamed Goliath by local researchers, continued its northward migration pattern and was documented off the coast of Central California the following month. It exhibited normal behavior with no further unusual human interaction. Brothers Islands, Red Sea, Egypt, 2017. Rising from depths of over 800 meters, the Brothers Islands, known locally as El Akawain, stood as twin sentinels in the middle of the Red Sea, approximately 67 kilometers from Egypt's eastern shoreline. These remote outcroppings had earned legendary status among the global diving community for their pristine coral formations, vertical drop-offs, and exceptional marine biodiversity. By 2017, their relative isolation and protected status had preserved an ecosystem largely untouched by mass tourism, attracting experienced divers seeking encounters with pelagic species rarely seen near more accessible reefs. Lena Kowalski, a 36-year-old Polish-Canadian marine photographer based in Vancouver, had built her reputation documenting threatened ocean ecosystems across 5 continents. After earning degrees in marine biology and visual arts from a university in Dalhousie, Lena transitioned from academic research to conservation storytelling, with her images appearing in prestigious publications and international exhibition spaces. Her signature technique involved capturing intimate moments between species in their natural habitats, often requiring significant time alone with her subjects. On September 3, 2017, Lena joined the liveaboard vessel Nefertiti for a specialized photography expedition to Egypt's offshore marine sanctuaries. The 10-day itinerary focused on optimal lighting conditions for underwater photography, scheduling dives during what professionals call magic hour, the periods of shifting illumination at dawn and dusk when sunlight creates dramatic effects through the water column. The expedition log noted that Lena had completed over 2,000 logged dives, placing her in the vessel's highest experience category. The 3rd day of the expedition brought the vessel to the Brothers Islands during ideal conditions. Minimal surface chop, visibility exceeding 30 meters, and gentle currents around the Western Island's pinnacle. Dive briefing notes emphasized that the site was known for occasional visits from oceanic white-tip sharks, particularly during early morning hours when the predators often transition between hunting depths. At around 6:38 a.m., Lena entered the water with 4 other photographers, including her frequent diving partner, Xavier Beaumont. The group descended to 27 meters and began photographing along the reef wall according to the planned route. Approximately 40 minutes into the dive, the team encountered a hawksbill turtle feeding among coral outcroppings. According to Beaumont's statement, Lena signaled her intention to follow the turtle briefly for specialized shots, while the others continued documenting a school of barracuda nearby. This momentary separation, estimated at less than 30 meters, placed Lena slightly deeper and farther from the reef wall than the main group, where the sloping reef transitioned to open water. Her dive computer, later recovered intact, recorded that she had maintained proper depth and air consumption rates throughout this period. The situation changed without warning at 7:24 a.m. Beaumont heard a disturbance and turned to see Lena engaged in what he initially thought was an equipment adjustment. Within seconds, he recognized that an oceanic white-tip shark, approximately 2.5 meters long, had seized her camera rig with its jaws. The force of the bite had also connected with her right shoulder and upper arm, creating an immediate cloud of blood in the water. The shark, displaying what marine biologists call test bite behavior, released its initial grip and began circling Lena at close distance. Beaumont immediately activated his emergency signaling device, a specialized underwater strobe that alerts all divers in visual range to an urgent situation. The dive leader, Mahmoud Salah, responded within seconds, bringing the team into defensive formation around Lena, who remained conscious but was clearly in shock. As the group began a controlled ascent toward the surface, the shark returned twice, making close investigatory passes at Lena's fins before the combined effect of the divers' defensive postures and their emergency air bubble releases finally drove it away. Throughout this critical phase, Beaumont maintained physical contact with Lena, supporting her injured side while Salah monitored their ascent rate to prevent decompression issues. The team reached the surface approximately 4 minutes after the initial bite. Dive Safety Officer Karim Naguib had prepared the vessel's emergency medical station based on the surface bubbles and distress signals. Lena was conscious but rapidly deteriorating from blood loss when lifted aboard. The vessel's physician, Dr. Fatima Hassan, applied pressure tourniquets and administered emergency plasma, while Captain Ahmed Rafiki initiated immediate evacuation protocols. The Nefertiti maximized speed toward the Egyptian mainland while maintaining satellite communication with medical authorities. Approximately 90 minutes after the incident, a military helicopter intercepted the vessel and airlifted Lena to the specialized trauma center at the International Hospital in Hurghada. Medical records documented extensive damage to Lena's deltoid muscle complex and multiple lacerations to her upper thoracic region, requiring 7 hours of microsurgery and over 300 sutures. Remarkably, the bite had missed major arteries by millimeters, a circumstance that trauma surgeon Dr. Amr El-Sayed described as the narrow margin between a serious injury and a fatal one. An investigation by the Egyptian Chamber for Diving and Water Sports determined that several factors contributed to the rare attack. The early morning timing coincided with active feeding periods for oceanic whitetips. At the same time, Lena's brief separation from the group had placed her in a vulnerable position between reef and open water, a transitional zone where predators often patrol. Additionally, her professional camera housing with its extending arms and strobes may have presented an unusual silhouette that triggered investigatory behavior. Lena survived but needed 16 months of rehabilitation to regain partial mobility in her right arm. During her recovery, she used her experience to develop the widely adopted solo safety protocol, which is now standard in professional underwater photography training. The guidelines emphasize maintaining visual buddy contact even during specialized shooting situations and recommend specific positioning to minimize predator interest in camera equipment. In a development that surprised the diving community, Lena returned to underwater photography in late 2019, though with modified equipment and strictly within group contexts. Her subsequent work, including an award-winning series titled Reef Shadows, incorporated her changed perspective on marine predator behavior and the delicate balance between observation and interaction in wild environments. Following the incident, the Brothers Islands dive sites implemented enhanced safety measures, including mandatory shark spotters during dawn and dusk dives, and stricter enforcement of buddy system protocols for all experience levels. The oceanic whitetip population around the islands continues to be monitored through a non-invasive identification program, partially funded by proceeds from Lena's photography exhibitions. During her 16-month rehabilitation, Lena discovered that her experience had created an unexpected platform for marine conservation messaging. While traditional shark attack narratives often cast the animals as villains, Lena instead developed the Respectful Distance Initiative, an educational program aimed at professional underwater photographers. Through webinars and articles published in specialized diving publications, she emphasized how subtle changes in photographer behavior could significantly reduce negative wildlife interactions. Her analysis of her attack revealed a pattern common among professionals. The pursuit of perfect images often led to unconscious boundary crossing with wildlife. By examining footage from cameras mounted on other expedition members, researchers identified that Lena had unknowingly positioned herself between the oceanic whitetip and its exit route to deeper water while pursuing the turtle. Combined with the early morning timing when the shark's hunting drive was most active, this positioning created what marine behavioral scientists now call a misinterpreted territorial challenge. The educational materials developed from this analysis have since been incorporated into certification requirements for professional underwater photography permits in marine sanctuaries across 22 countries. The physical aftermath of the attack transformed Lena's artistic approach in unexpected ways. Unable to manipulate camera equipment with her dominant hand for several months, she began experimenting with left-handed shooting techniques that ultimately evolved into a distinctive new style. Her post-recovery work featured what critics called vulnerability perspective, compositions that positioned the viewer as the observed rather than the observer in marine environments. One particularly powerful image, eye contact, captured an oceanic white-tip shark from below, its silhouette framed against rippling surface light, conveying the animal's beauty and inherent power without sentimentality or demonization. This photograph, which required Lena to work with a specialized assistant who could intervene if necessary, earned the prestigious Wildlife Photographer of the Year award in 2020. During her acceptance speech at the Natural History Museum in London, Lena spoke about finding reconciliation with both her physical limitations and her complex relationship with the species that had nearly taken her life. To understand predators, she noted, we must first understand that they are responding to us as elements in their environment, not characters in our story. This perspective helped reshape public discourse around shark encounters and inspired a new generation of conservation photographers to approach their subjects with heightened awareness of behavioral boundaries. The coastal town of Dahab, Egypt, had long been renowned for its breathtaking underwater landscapes, drawing divers from across the globe since the 1970s. Nestled on the southeast coast of the Sinai Peninsula, where the Gulf of Aqaba's crystal-clear waters met the rugged desert shoreline, Dahab's blue hole and surrounding reefs offered some of the most spectacular diving experiences in the world. But in 2017, what began as a routine guided dive would end in tragedy, forever changing how local dive operators approached certain areas of these magnificent waters. Emma Harrington, a 34-year-old British marine photographer with over 500 log dives, had traveled to Dahab specifically to capture images of the region's vibrant coral formations. Having visited Egypt's Red Sea coast several times before, she was considered experienced enough to join advanced diving groups. On April 23rd, Emma joined a group of 6 divers led by instructor Mikhail Rostov, a Russian expatriate who had been guiding dives in the area for over a decade. The morning started with perfect conditions, minimal wind, excellent visibility, and calm seas. After a thorough briefing at the Coral Coast Diving Center, the group boarded a small boat that would take them to a site known locally as the Canyon, a magnificent underwater ravine famous for its dramatic topography and abundant marine life. The dive began without incident. The group descended in formation with Mikhail leading and his assistant instructor bringing up the rear. As they reached a depth of approximately 25 meters, they encountered schools of colorful anthias fish darting around the coral heads, while larger groupers moved lazily through the deeper sections of the canyon. Emma, entranced by a particularly striking coral formation, lingered slightly behind the main group. She signaled to Mikhail that she wanted to photograph the area, and he acknowledged with an okay sign, assuming she would catch up shortly. This momentary separation, something experienced divers often did, would prove fateful. As Emma positioned herself for the perfect shot, adjusting her buoyancy to hover steadily in the water column, a large shadow appeared in her peripheral vision. Moving with surprising speed and purpose was a bull shark, estimated to be nearly 3 meters in length. Bull sharks were unusual but not unheard of in the region, known for their ability to tolerate both salt and freshwater environments, and unfortunately for their unpredictable aggression. The shark circled once, evaluating the strange creature in its territory. Emma, aware of proper protocol during shark encounters, stopped photographing and slowly began to position herself vertically in the water, making herself appear larger while maintaining steady breathing through her regulator. But before she could complete this defensive posture, the shark charged. The first strike came without warning. The bull shark's powerful jaws clamped onto Emma's right leg just below the knee. The force of the bite tore through her wetsuit and into flesh and muscle. Nearby divers later reported hearing a muffled scream through the water as Emma instinctively struck at the shark's sensitive snout with her camera housing. The shark released its grip momentarily, but, in a behavior rarely witnessed in shark attacks, immediately circled back for a second, more determined to attack. This time it seized Emma by the torso, dragging her deeper into the blue water beyond the canyon's edge. Mikhail, now aware of the emergency, raced toward her, but found himself too distant to intervene in time. In what marine biologists would later describe as a remarkable display of presence of mind during extreme trauma, Emma managed to reach for her buoyancy control device, BCD inflator, and pressed it firmly. The sudden inflation caused her to rise rapidly toward the surface, a dangerous maneuver that risked decompression sickness but was her only hope of escape. The rapid ascent apparently startled the shark, which released its grip. Two divers from the group, witnessing her uncontrolled rise, quickly followed, careful to maintain safer ascent rates themselves. They reached the surface minutes after Emma, finding her conscious but severely injured, and losing blood rapidly. The boat crew responded with practiced urgency, pulling her aboard and applying pressure bandages while radioing for emergency assistance. Despite their efforts and a swift transit to the nearest medical facility in Sharm el-Sheikh, Emma succumbed to her injuries from blood loss and trauma before reaching the hospital. The incident sent shockwaves through the diving community. Investigation revealed that local fishermen had reported increased shark activity in the area in the preceding weeks, but the information hadn't been widely disseminated among dive operations. Mikhail provided a detailed account of the attack to authorities, describing Emma's calm professionalism even in her final moments. Marine biologists from Cairo University who studied the incident concluded that several unusual factors had contributed to the attack's severity. The shark's unusually aggressive behavior, particularly the secondary attack, was atypical even for bull sharks. They hypothesized that the animal might have been in an agitated state due to territorial disputes with other sharks or changes in the local ecosystem. In the aftermath, Dahab's diving community implemented stricter protocols, including mandatory shark awareness briefings, enhanced communication systems between dive boats regarding wildlife sightings, and temporary restrictions on diving in areas where large predators had been spotted. A memorial plaque for Emma was placed at the Coral Coast Diving Center, serving as a somber reminder of the ocean's unpredictable nature. Emma's underwater camera was later recovered from the sea floor by a search team. Remarkably, the waterproof housing had protected the memory card, and among the final images was a blurry but identifiable photograph of the bull shark during its initial approach, a haunting last professional act from a woman who had dedicated her life to documenting the beauty and power of the underwater world. The incident, while tragic, contributed valuable information to shark behavior research and led to improved safety measures throughout Egypt's Red Sea diving industry. Local dive masters now point to Emma's case during safety briefings, emphasizing that even experienced divers must maintain vigilant buddy systems and respect the primordial power of the ocean's apex predators. The Maldives archipelago, a string of coral atolls scattered across the Indian Ocean like emerald jewels on azure silk, had long been a paradise for travelers seeking tropical perfection. In 2015, the nation's tourism industry was booming, with luxury resorts competing to offer increasingly exotic experiences to wealthy clientele. One such experience, underwater photography, had gained popularity among fashion magazines looking to create otherworldly images that would captivate audiences grown numb to conventional beauty. Elena Volkova, a 25-year-old rising star in the modeling world, had arrived at the exclusive Ara Resort and Spa on North Male Atoll 3 days earlier. The Moscow-born model had rapidly gained international recognition for her ethereal features and willingness to endure challenging conditions for the perfect image. This particular assignment for Lumiere magazine promised to be her most ambitious yet. a series of underwater photographs featuring high-end resort wear against the backdrop of the Maldives' famous coral gardens. The photography team was led by Alexei Kuznetsov, an award-winning fashion photographer known for his technical precision and artistic vision. Having worked with Elena on previous shoots in challenging environments, he had personally requested her for this assignment, confident in her ability to appear graceful while holding her breath for extended periods. Completing the team was Ramesh Gunaratne, a Sri Lankan dive master with 15 years of experience guiding underwater excursions throughout the Indian Ocean. On the morning of November 12th, conditions seemed perfect. Clear skies, minimal wind, and exceptional underwater visibility predicted to exceed 30 meters. The team had selected a site known locally as Blue Garden, a coral reef formation approximately 800 meters from the resort's overwater bungalows. The location featured a dramatic drop-off where the reef plunged from 7 meters to over 40, creating a stunning blue backdrop that Alexei believed would contrast perfectly with Elena's pale complexion and the vibrant designer clothing. After a thorough briefing and equipment check, the team boarded a traditional Maldivian dhoni boat and headed to the site. Elena wore a specialized wetsuit beneath her first outfit, a flowing crimson gown with fabric specifically treated to maintain its appearance underwater. Both she and Alexei used lightweight scuba gear that could be temporarily removed during shooting sequences to create the illusion that Elena was naturally suspended in the ocean depths. The first hour passed successfully, with Elena demonstrating remarkable breath control, as Alexei captured images of her appearing to drift effortlessly among coral formations. Ramesh maintained vigilant supervision, ensuring neither photographer nor model strayed too close to delicate coral or ventured beyond their experience level. As they began the third shooting sequence at a depth of approximately 10 meters, Ramesh noticed a change in the behavior of the smaller reef fish. A sudden exodus from one section of the reef indicated the presence of a predator. Not an unusual occurrence, but something that warranted attention. He signaled to Alexei that they should be prepared to end the session, but before the photographer could acknowledge, a large shadow emerged from the blue. A tiger shark, later estimated to be nearly 4 meters in length, glided into view. Tiger sharks were not common in this specific area, but were known to inhabit Maldivian waters. This particular specimen moved with the unhurried confidence of an apex predator, its distinctive striped pattern rippling as it surveyed this unusual intrusion into its hunting grounds. Ramesh immediately signaled for both Elena and Alexei to remain absolutely still. The standard protocol for unexpected shark encounters emphasized calm movements and maintaining visual contact with the animal. Elena, partially obscured behind a coral outcropping and absorbed in maintaining her pose, did not immediately notice the shark's arrival or Ramesh's warning gestures. When she finally spotted the massive predator, her reaction was subtle but detectable, a slight tensing of her body, and a small release of bubbles as she instinctively gasped. This minor movement, combined with the flowing red fabric of her gown undulating in the current, appeared to trigger the shark's predatory instinct. Without warning, the tiger shark changed course, accelerating directly toward Elena. Ramesh launched himself in her direction, but the distance was too great. The shark struck with terrifying precision, its powerful jaws clamping around Elena's midsection. The force of the impact drove both model and predator deeper into the water column. Alexei, horror-struck, captured the entire sequence on his camera, images that would never be published but would later prove crucial to understanding the attack. Ramesh reached the scene seconds later, using his dive knife to strike at the shark's sensitive snout and gills. After what seemed an eternity but was likely less than 30 seconds, the shark released Elena and disappeared into the depths, leaving an expanding cloud of crimson in the water. Ramesh immediately began an emergency ascent with Elena, careful to avoid the potentially fatal complications of rising too quickly despite the desperate situation. Alexei followed, signaling frantically to the boat crew above. When they reached the surface, Elena was unconscious, having suffered catastrophic injuries to her torso and lower extremities. Despite the boat crew's immediate first aid efforts and the resort's medical team awaiting their arrival at the dock, Elena was pronounced dead before the medical evacuation helicopter could arrive from Mail. Subsequent investigation revealed that the shark had severed her femoral artery, leading to rapid blood loss that would have been difficult to survive even with immediate hospital access. The incident sent shockwaves through both the Maldivian tourism industry and the international fashion community. The resort temporarily suspended all water activities while marine biologists conducted a thorough assessment of local shark populations and behavior patterns. Alexei, deeply traumatized by witnessing his colleague's death, abandoned underwater photography entirely and retreated from public life for nearly 2 years. Ramesh, despite being cleared of any negligence by official investigation, carried the weight of the tragedy heavily. He eventually established a Shark Awareness Foundation in Elena's name, dedicated to promoting understanding and conservation of these misunderstood predators, while advocating for improved safety protocols in areas where humans and sharks coexist. Marine biologists who studied the incident concluded that several unusual factors had aligned to create the perfect storm of circumstances leading to the attack. The flowing red garment, combined with Elena's vertical positioning in the water column and the slight distress signals she unknowingly displayed, had likely triggered a predatory response rarely directed at humans. The incident, while devastating, provided valuable data that would inform future underwater safety guidelines for not only photographers, but all ocean users in shark-inhabited waters. Elena's family established a scholarship in her memory at Moscow's prestigious Academy of Fine Arts, ensuring that her brief but brilliant career would continue to inspire young artists for generations to come. In the Maldives, local dive operators now include her story in their safety briefings. A somber reminder that even in paradise, nature's most fundamental laws remain unchanged since prehistoric times. The coastal town situated at Australia's easternmost point in New South Wales has gained international recognition, not only for its stunning beaches and bohemian atmosphere, but also for its remarkable marine biodiversity. In 2018, this pristine environment became the setting for an encounter that would challenge one scientist's relationship with the ocean she had dedicated her life to studying. Dr. Maya Chandrasekhar, a 30-year-old marine ecologist affiliated with the University of Sydney's Department of Marine Science, had arrived in the town 3 weeks earlier to conduct research on coral reef resilience in warming oceans. With funding from the Australian Research Council and support from local conservation authorities, she led a small team documenting the health of reef systems within the marine protected area. Having grown up in coastal Sydney with an oceanographer father, Maya had developed a profound connection to the sea from childhood, eventually channeling this passion into academic excellence and fieldwork across the Indo-Pacific region. On the morning of March 8th, Maya and her research assistants, Drs. Oliver Blackwood and Freya Johnston, embarked on what was intended to be a routine survey of a reef system approximately 1 kilometer offshore from Wadagos Beach. Weather conditions were optimal: clear skies, light easterly winds, and exceptional water clarity following a week without significant rainfall. The team had selected this particular morning to document marine life activity during the incoming tide, when nutrient-rich waters typically increase fish presence around the reef formations. The researchers anchored their small research vessel, the Poseidon, over a section of reef that dropped from 3 meters to nearly 15 meters in depth. After reviewing their survey protocols and checking their equipment, the 3 scientists entered the water, each assigned to document different aspects of the ecosystem. Maya would focus on photographing indicator species. Oliver would collect water samples at varying depths, and Freya would measure coral growth rates at predetermined stations. For nearly 40 minutes, the survey progressed without incident. The reef displayed remarkable health, with diverse coral formations providing habitat for a multitude of species. Maya had just finished photographing a particularly vibrant collection of soft corals when she noticed an unusual movement in her peripheral vision. Approximately 10 meters away, gliding through the water with unmistakable purpose, was a mako shark. Mako sharks, while not uncommon in Australian waters, rarely ventured so close to shore in the Byron Bay area. This specimen appeared to be a juvenile male, roughly 2 meters in length, not fully grown but still a formidable predator capable of swimming at speeds exceeding 70 kilometers per hour. Maya, having encountered various shark species during her career, initially maintained her position, knowing that most sharks show little interest in humans unless provoked or confused. She slowly raised her underwater camera, recognizing the scientific value of documenting this unexpected visitor. The shark continued its path parallel to the reef edge, appearing to hunt the schools of mackerel that had gathered in the area. Maya signaled to her colleagues, pointing toward the shark while displaying the predetermined hand sign, indicating they should maintain distance but not panic. What happened next occurred with such speed that later recollections from all three scientists contained slight variations. The shark, having completed a wide circuit of the area, suddenly changed direction. Whether attracted by the metallic elements of Maya's camera equipment, the vibrations of her movements, or some other stimulus remains a subject of scientific debate. What is undisputed is that the Mako accelerated directly toward her position with alarming velocity. Maya attempted to maintain her composure, slowly backing toward a large coral formation while keeping her eyes on the approaching predator. This textbook response to shark approaches had served her well in previous encounters. However, the Mako's behavior defied standard patterns. Instead of veering away at the last moment, a common investigatory behavior among sharks, it struck Maya's right arm with such force that witnesses described hearing the impact through the water. The shark's teeth penetrated her wetsuit and flesh in an instant, creating deep lacerations from her wrist to her elbow. The power of the bite momentarily pulled Maya underwater, disorienting her and causing her to lose her regulator. In that critical moment, as blood began clouding the water around her, Maya's extensive training overrode panic. She retrieved her regulator with her left hand, cleared it with a forceful exhalation, and immediately began kicking toward the surface. Oliver, positioned nearest to Maya, witnessed the attack and immediately abandoned his sampling equipment to assist his colleague. By the time he reached her, the shark had circled back, apparently drawn by the blood now trailing through the water. In a desperate maneuver, Oliver placed himself between Maya and the predator, using his aluminum sample collection tube as a defensive barrier. This intervention, combined with Freya's arrival moments later, and her deployment of an emergency shark deterrent device, a small canister that released a dense cloud of clove oil extract, known to temporarily overwhelm sharks' sensitive smell receptors, created sufficient confusion to allow the team to begin their ascent to the surface. The Mako made one final pass but did not reinitiate contact. The three scientists broke the surface approximately 20 meters from their anchored vessel. Freya immediately began signaling to a nearby recreational fishing boat, which responded by moving quickly to their position. The fishing vessel's captain, Russell Tennyson, a retired paramedic, recognized the seriousness of Maya's injuries and implemented immediate first aid while radioing the Byron Bay Marine Rescue for emergency assistance. Within 15 minutes, a water ambulance arrived on the scene. Maya remained conscious throughout the ordeal, her scientific mind seemingly detached from her physical trauma, as she provided clear descriptions of the shark and the attack mechanics to the first responders, details that would later prove valuable to both medical personnel and marine researchers. At the hospital, Maya underwent 6 hours of microsurgery to repair damaged tendons, muscles, and blood vessels in her arm. Remarkably, no major arteries had been severed, and she had maintained sufficient presence of mind during the attack to avoid the rapid movements that often exacerbate shark bite injuries. The attending surgeon, Dr. Vivian McPherson, later commented that Maya's calm response likely prevented the loss of her arm and possibly her life. During her recovery, Maya collaborated with shark researchers from the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries to analyze the incident. They concluded that the Mako's unusual behavior might have been influenced by several factors: the presence of baitfish in the area, potential territorial competition from larger sharks offshore, and the possibility that the metallic components in Maya's camera housing created electromagnetic signals similar to those produced by wounded fish. 4 months after the attack, Maya returned to the water, initially in protected swimming areas, then gradually venturing back to snorkeling in open water. Her research focus shifted somewhat, incorporating studies on shark behavior and human-shark interactions into her broader marine ecology work. She became an advocate for both shark conservation and improved safety protocols for marine researchers, frequently noting that her experience represented an anomaly rather than the norm in human-shark encounters. The incident led to revised safety guidelines for scientific diving operations in Australian marine protected areas, including mandatory carrying of shark deterrent devices and enhanced communication systems between research teams and shore-based support staff. Maya's detailed account of the attack, published in the Journal of Marine Behavior, became required reading for marine science students across Australia. When interviewed for a documentary the following year, Maya expressed no resentment toward the shark or fear of returning to her work. 2019, the picturesque coastal town of Ensenada in Baja California, Mexico, became the backdrop for a remarkable tale of survival against all odds. Ensenada had been a thriving fishing community for generations, with locals venturing into the nutrient-rich waters of the Pacific to harvest the abundant marine life. The region's history was deeply intertwined with the sea. From the indigenous Kumeyaay people who first fished these waters to the modern commercial operations that sustained the local economy. However, these same waters harbored dangers that occasionally reminded humans of their vulnerability in the marine environment. Michael Rojas, a 48-year-old seasoned fisherman with over 30 years of experience, captained the modestly sized commercial fishing vessel Estrella del Mar. Rojas had earned a reputation among the local fishing community for his uncanny ability to locate the best fishing spots and his intuitive understanding of oceanic patterns. His four-person crew consisted of his brother-in-law Javier Mendez, longtime friends Eduardo Fuentes and Pablo Ortiz, and newcomer Carlos Vega, who had joined the crew just 3 months prior. On March 12th, the Estrella del Mar departed Ensenada's harbor before dawn, heading toward a promising fishing ground approximately 40 kilometers offshore. The weather forecast had predicted calm conditions, but the unpredictable nature of the Pacific had been a lesson many local fishermen had learned the hard way over the centuries. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds began gathering on the horizon. The barometer reading plummeted rapidly, signaling an approaching storm that had developed much faster than meteorologists had anticipated. Rojas decided to cut their expedition short and head back to port, but the storm overtook them frighteningly. Powerful waves, some reaching heights of 15 feet, battered the 35-foot vessel relentlessly. Despite Rojas's expert handling, a particularly massive wave struck the boat broadside. Witnesses later reported that the Estrella del Mar capsized within minutes, throwing all 5 men into the churning waters. The crew managed to deploy their emergency life raft just before the boat went down, but in the storm's chaos, Rojas became separated from the others. Mendez, Fuentes, Ortiz, and Vega clung to the life raft for nearly 7 hours before being spotted by a Coast Guard helicopter. Upon their rescue, they immediately reported Rojas's absence, triggering one of the largest search operations in the region's recent history. The Mexican Navy, alongside the U.S. Coast Guard, combed an area of over 1,500 square kilometers for the missing captain. For 4 days, hope diminished with each passing hour. Then, remarkably, a commercial fishing vessel, the San Pedro, spotted something unusual floating approximately 15 miles offshore, much farther north than where the Estrella del Mar had capsized. They discovered Rojas clinging weakly to a drifting section of his boat's wooden deck as they approached. He was severely dehydrated, sunburned, and most alarmingly bore multiple deep lacerations across his back, arms, and legs. Once stabilized at a general hospital in Ensenada, Rojas recounted his harrowing ordeal. After being separated from his crew, he had managed to grab onto a floating piece of debris, a section of the deck that had broken off during the capsizing. For the first night, he had drifted at the mercy of the currents, hoping to encounter other vessels or eventually wash ashore. On the second day, Rojas noticed a dark shadow circling beneath him. Initially believing it might be dolphins, he soon realized with horror that a large tiger shark, approximately 12 feet in length, had taken interest in him. The predator circled for hours, occasionally bumping the makeshift raft from below. The shark moved as exhaustion and dehydration caused Rojas to drift in and out of consciousness. It attacked from behind in a sudden burst of speed, its powerful jaws clamping onto Rojas's lower back. The fisherman described fighting with every ounce of remaining strength, striking at the shark's sensitive snout and eyes as he had learned from old fishermen's tales. The attack lasted only moments, but left Rojas with deep lacerations. Fortunately, a strong current seemed to carry him away from the immediate area, temporarily ending the confrontation. Finding a larger piece of floating debris, a substantial log that had likely washed out to sea during recent inland flooding, Rojas managed to pull himself aboard. Using a broken oar that had remarkably stayed with him during the ordeal, he defended himself when the persistent shark returned for additional passes. For another 2 days, Rojas drifted, using his shirt to bandage his wounds as best he could, and collecting minimal rainwater during a brief shower. The tiger shark returned intermittently, circling his makeshift raft but never approaching as closely as during the initial attack. When finally rescued, Rojas required immediate medical attention for severe dehydration, exposure, and the multiple lacerations he had sustained. Doctors at the hospital marveled at his survival, noting that the shark's teeth had missed his vital organs by mere centimeters. Recovery would take months, with extensive physical therapy needed to regain full function of his injured limbs. The psychological impact of the ordeal proved equally challenging. Despite generations of his family living from the sea, Rojas never returned to commercial fishing. The trauma of the encounter left him with a profound fear of deep water. 6 months after his rescue, he opened a small boat repair shop in Ensenada, where he now shares his cautionary tale with young fishermen, emphasizing the importance of respecting the sea's unpredictable nature and its powerful inhabitants. Marine biologists who studied the case suggested that the tiger shark's behavior might have been initially investigative rather than predatory. Still, the shark likely became more aggressive after detecting blood in the water from Rojas's existing injuries sustained during the shipwreck. His survival against such overwhelming odds earned him the nickname El Milagroso, the miraculous one, among the local fishing community. In May 2022, the crystalline waters surrounding Oahu, Hawaii, concealed dangers beneath their deceptively peaceful surface. The Hawaiian archipelago, formed by volcanic activity millions of years ago, had long been recognized for its extraordinary marine biodiversity. The island's isolation in the middle of the Pacific had created unique ecosystems, where various shark species, including the formidable tiger shark, reigned as apex predators. For centuries, native Hawaiians regarded sharks as aumakua, or family gods, treating them with reverence and respect, a wisdom modern visitors sometimes fail to appreciate. U.S. Navy Sergeant Jason Brooks, a 29-year-old elite underwater demolition specialist with the Navy's Explosive Ordnance Disposal (EOD) unit, had been stationed at Naval Station Pearl Harbor for under 2 years. Brooks had distinguished himself during 2 previous deployments in the Persian Gulf, earning commendations for his exceptional underwater navigation skills and cool-headed judgment under pressure. With over 2,000 logged dive hours, including numerous high-risk operations, Brooks was considered one of the unit's most capable operatives. On May 17th, Brooks and his 5-member team received orders to conduct what was classified as a routine but sensitive underwater demolition exercise approximately 3 miles offshore of Kaneohe Bay on Oahu's eastern coast. The operation involved locating, identifying, and safely neutralizing simulated underwater explosive devices placed along a secluded reef formation at depths ranging from 50 to 80 feet. While predominantly a training exercise, the mission also cleared the area of potentially dangerous abandoned military ordnance from earlier decades. The team deployed from the USS Defender, a specialized mine countermeasures vessel, at 0700 hours under ideal weather conditions. Visibility underwater extended to nearly 100 feet, with minimal current and a comfortable water temperature of 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Brooks and his dive buddy, Petty Officer Ramirez, were assigned to investigate the deeper northern section of the reef, while the remaining team members covered the southern approach. At approximately 0843 hours, Brooks descended to a depth of 65 feet near a dramatic underwater outcropping, where the reef dropped sharply into deeper water. According to the mission log later recovered from his diving computer, Brooks had just identified the first training device when Ramirez, positioned slightly above and behind him, noticed an unusually large shadow approaching from the blue water beyond the reef edge. Before either diver could react, a massive tiger shark, later estimated from video footage to be approximately 14 feet in length, charged directly at Brooks from his blind spot. Unlike sharks' typically cautious investigatory approaches, this attack was immediate and decisive. The shark clamped its powerful jaws around Brooks's right thigh and lower torso, its serrated teeth slicing through his reinforced tactical wetsuit. The initial bite generated tremendous force, dragging Brooks away from the reef and downward toward deeper water. The shark's characteristic head-shaking motion, evolved to tear chunks from prey, threatened to inflict catastrophic damage. Despite the sudden attack and the disorientation of being dragged, Brooks' extensive combat training activated. He later reported that his immediate thoughts focused not on panic but on implementing the shark defense protocols covered during his advanced dive training. Reaching for the tactical knife strapped to his left calf, Brooks executed a series of precisely targeted strikes against the shark's most sensitive areas. He directed his initial jabs toward the creature's eyes, following with strikes to the gill areas known to be highly sensitive and typically cause sharks to release their grip. The shark maintained its hold momentarily before the pain stimulus triggered it to release Brooks and circle away, giving him a critical window for escape. Witnessing the attack, Ramirez immediately activated the team's emergency protocols and rushed to assist his teammate. The remaining divers, alerted by the emergency signal, converged on the location within 90 seconds. Chief Petty Officer Wilkinson established a defensive perimeter, while Petty Officers Chen and DeMarco secured Brooks for emergency ascent. Lieutenant Commander Okafor, the team leader, coordinated the extraction while maintaining vigilance for the shark's potential return. The team executed a controlled emergency ascent, carefully monitoring Brooks' condition to prevent additional complications from rapid decompression. The USS Defender's medical team stood ready as Brooks was brought aboard, where emergency medical protocols were immediately implemented. A medical evacuation helicopter was dispatched from Tripler Army Medical Center, arriving within 15 minutes to airlift Brooks to advanced trauma care. Medical assessment revealed that Brooks had sustained multiple deep lacerations to his right thigh, hip, and lower abdomen. Several wounds penetrated to the muscle layer, with one particularly severe laceration coming dangerously close to his femoral artery. Had the shark's teeth found this major blood vessel, the outcome would likely have been fatal despite his team's rapid response. Additionally, Brooks suffered 4 broken ribs and significant soft tissue damage from the crushing pressure of the shark's jaws. Surgery lasted nearly 7 hours as medical teams worked to repair damaged muscle tissue, close multiple wound tracks, and address secondary injuries. Remarkably, no major organs had been severely damaged, and all critical blood vessels remained intact, a circumstance the attending surgeon described as extraordinarily fortunate. Brooks' recovery required 3 months of intensive rehabilitation at a military medical center, where he underwent specialized physical therapy to restore function to his damaged leg muscles. Psychological evaluation revealed minimal signs of post-traumatic stress, which specialists attributed to Brooks' exceptional mental resilience and the comprehensive nature of his training. Marine biologists who reviewed footage from the team's underwater cameras noted several unusual aspects of the incident. Tiger sharks typically exhibit investigatory behavior before attacking, often circling potential prey multiple times. This attack's immediate and directed nature suggested territorial defense, or the shark misidentifying Brooks as natural prey due to his position near the reef edge, where tiger sharks commonly hunt. In a demonstration of remarkable dedication, Brooks returned to active duty 6 months after the incident, though he was temporarily restricted from solo diving operations. His first-hand account of effective defensive techniques was incorporated into the Navy's underwater threat response training, potentially benefiting future divers facing similar situations. The incident led to revised operational protocols for Navy diving operations in known shark territories, including enhanced pre-dive aerial surveillance, improved shark detection equipment, and modified team configurations to ensure continuous 360-degree monitoring. Brooks advocated for these changes, emphasizing that proper preparation, rather than fear, should guide diving operations in shark habitat. In December 2022, Brooks was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal for his composure under extreme circumstances and his contributions to improve safety protocols. He continues to serve with the EOD unit, now as an instructor specializing in underwater threat response. His experience provides invaluable real-world insights for the next generation of military divers. In 2014, the remote archipelago of Bazaruto off Mozambique's southeastern coast presented a perfect tropical paradise for visitors seeking pristine beaches and vibrant marine ecosystems. The region, designated as a national park in 1971, protected a vast area of coral reefs, seagrass beds, and mangrove forests that supported extraordinary biodiversity. These waters, where the warm Mozambique current met nutrient-rich upwellings from the deep Indian Ocean, attracted not only international tourists, but also numerous apex predators, including the notoriously aggressive bull shark, a species known for its ability to thrive in both saltwater and freshwater environments. Thomas Reginald Harper, a 35-year-old architectural engineer from London, and his wife, Sarah Elaine Harper, a 33-year-old emergency room physician, had selected Bazaruto Island for their 10th wedding anniversary celebration. During their decade together, the couple had developed a shared passion for marine exploration, accumulating hundreds of dive hours across destinations from the Great Barrier Reef to the Galapagos Islands. Their extensive experience had bred not complacency, but respect. Both were certified rescue divers who meticulously maintained their equipment and studied local marine conditions before every expedition. On April 18th, the Harpers joined a small guided snorkeling tour operated by the luxury eco-resort where they were staying. The excursion targeted a vibrant reef formation approximately 300 meters offshore from the island's eastern coast. Known locally as 2-Mile Reef, the site offered exceptional visibility and relatively shallow depths ideal for snorkeling, with coral formations rising within 10 feet of the surface at low tide. The 6-person tour group included the Harpers, a newlywed couple from Australia, a marine biology student from South Africa, and their local guide Mateus Tembe, who had over 15 years of experience navigating these waters. Weather conditions were ideal that morning. Light easterly winds, clear skies, and minimal current. Tembe conducted a thorough safety briefing before the group entered the water, noting that shark encounters were rare in the area but not unprecedented. The group explored the reef's northern section for nearly 40 minutes without incident. Thomas and Sarah, more experienced than the others, had gradually drifted about 30 meters away from the main group, observing a particularly vibrant coral bommy teeming with butterfly fish and angelfish. According to Sarah's later account, they were floating side by side when she noticed Thomas suddenly stiffen. Following his gaze, she spotted what initially appeared to be a large gray reef shark approaching from deeper water. Within moments, it became clear they were observing something far more dangerous. The distinctive blunt snout and stocky body identified the approaching animal as a bull shark, one of the ocean's most unpredictable predators. Later analysis of Sarah's underwater camera footage estimated the specimen at approximately 2.8 meters, 9 feet in length. Thomas immediately signaled to his wife and both began a calm but purposeful retreat toward the main group and their anchored boat. The shark, however, appeared unusually focused, accelerating directly toward Thomas without the typical investigatory circling behavior these predators often display. Before either snorkeler could react further, the bull shark charged, striking Thomas from below. Its powerful jaws clamped onto his right arm just below the elbow, with such force that witnesses reported hearing his muffled scream underwater. The initial attack lasted only seconds, but inflicted devastating damage. The shark's serrated teeth severed muscles, tendons, and blood vessels, nearly detaching Thomas's forearm completely. The water around him immediately clouded with blood as the shark released its grip momentarily before circling back for a secondary attack, a common behavior pattern for bull sharks. In what marine safety experts would later describe as an extraordinary act of courage, Sarah recognized the immediate danger to her husband and acted decisively. Rather than retreating to safety, she swam directly toward the circling predator. She later explained that bull sharks often attack what they perceive as the weakest or most vulnerable target, and that she had known if she positioned herself between Thomas and the shark, she might be able to redirect its attention long enough for him to escape. Her gambit proved simultaneously successful and dangerous. As Sarah approached, the shark abruptly changed direction, abandoning its injured prey and charging her instead. Using techniques learned during a shark awareness course they had taken years earlier in Australia, Sarah assumed a vertical position in the water and forcefully kicked with her fins directly at the shark's sensitive snout and gills as it approached. The unexpected defensive maneuver momentarily deterred the predator, allowing Thomas to begin swimming weakly toward the boat despite his catastrophic injury. Guide Tembe, alerted by the commotion and blood in the water, had already begun mobilizing rescue efforts, directing the other snorkelers back onto the boat while grabbing the emergency medical kit. Sarah maintained her defensive posture between her husband and the shark, which continued to circle but now at a slightly greater distance. After what she estimated to be nearly 2 minutes of this deadly standoff, though video analysis later suggested it was closer to 45 seconds, the shark made one final close pass before suddenly descending into deeper water and disappearing from view. With the immediate threat seemingly gone, Sarah quickly moved to assist her severely injured husband. Drawing on her medical training, she assessed that Thomas's brachial artery had been severed, creating a life-threatening hemorrhage. Using her rash guard shirt as an improvised tourniquet, she managed to stem the worst of the bleeding while helping Thomas toward the boat, where Tembe and the Australian couple pulled them aboard. Once aboard, Sarah took full command of the emergency response. Using the boat's first aid kit supplemented with medical supplies she carried in her dive bag, she stabilized Thomas's injury, administering emergency fluids and applying proper pressure bandages. Tembe radioed for emergency evacuation while piloting the boat at maximum speed back to the resort, where a medical evacuation helicopter had been summoned from the mainland. Thomas remained conscious throughout the 17-minute journey to shore, a factor that medical personnel later credited as crucial to his survival. The helicopter transported him to a district hospital in Vilanculos for initial stabilization before a second air ambulance flew him to a specialized trauma center in Johannesburg, South Africa. The attack resulted in the loss of Thomas's right arm below the elbow, requiring multiple surgeries and eventual prosthetic fitting. His physical recovery spanned nearly 9 months, with extensive rehabilitation to adapt to his prosthesis and regain independence in daily activities. Remarkably, neither Thomas nor Sarah developed long-term psychological aversion to ocean activities. 18 months after the incident, Thomas returned to snorkeling, this time in the protected lagoons of Mauritius. When interviewed for a documentary about their experience, the couple emphasized that they generally harbored no animosity toward the shark or marine conservation efforts. Marine biologists studying the incident suggested several factors that might have triggered the unusually direct attack, including the possibility that the bull shark was protecting a nearby pupping ground, or that Thomas's colorful wetsuit pattern might have resembled an injured fish from below. In recognition of her extraordinary courage, Sarah received the Royal Humane Society's Silver Medal for bravery. The couple now regularly conducts workshops on marine safety and shark attack response protocols for European diving associations. Their experience has been incorporated into training materials used by emergency responders, specializing in marine incidents, potentially saving countless lives through the lessons learned during those terrifying moments off Mozambique's coast. Cape Town, South Africa, 2010. The waters off Gansbaai, a small fishing town 2 hours from Cape Town, had long been known as Shark Alley due to the dense population of great white sharks that patrolled its depths. The area had transformed from a quiet fishing village into a tourism hotspot during the early 2000s, with dozens of companies offering cage diving experiences to thrill seekers wanting close encounters with the ocean's apex predators. The practice was controversial among marine conservationists, who worried that the constant baiting altered natural hunting patterns and potentially increased risks for humans and sharks. Valery Serova, a 28-year-old Russian social media star with over 5 million followers across platforms, had built her brand on luxury and danger. Valery, the daughter of a Moscow telecommunications magnate, showcased a life of private jets, designer fashion shoots in exotic locations, and increasingly daring stunts that kept her engagement metrics climbing. Her signature catchphrase, "Life without risk isn't living," appeared beneath every post. Her management team had recently signed a 7-figure deal with an extreme sports drink company that required regular adventure content to satisfy the contract terms. When Valery announced her intention to live-stream a cage-free dive with great white sharks, her publicity team tried to dissuade her. Her diving instructor, Hendrik van der Merwe, reportedly warned her that free diving with great whites fundamentally differed from the controlled cage experiences tourists offer. Valery dismissed these concerns, noting that similar stunts with tiger sharks in the Bahamas had doubled her following the previous year. The production crew reluctantly agreed to proceed with the condition that safety divers would remain just out of frame during the broadcast. On June 17, 2010, Valery's chartered boat anchored in the infamous waters between Dyer Island and Geyser Rock. The morning was overcast, creating low-visibility conditions that the boat captain, Willem Stassen, later testified had concerned him enough to suggest postponing. According to crew interviews, Valery refused any delay, citing the scheduled live-stream announcement that had already generated nearly 1 million waiting viewers. The production team began chumming the water an hour before the broadcast. When Valery entered the water in her branded wetsuit, 4 great whites had been spotted circling the area. Marine biologists later noted that the shark's behavior showed signs of what experts call excited feeding patterns, characterized by quickened movements and frequent direction changes. 23 minutes into the live stream, Valery, narrating her experience to her audience while maintaining a respectful distance from the nearest shark, the largest great white, estimated at 4.8 meters, suddenly changed course. Viewers watched in horror as the predator accelerated toward Valery without the typical investigatory bumping behavior that often precedes attacks. The shark struck with such force that Valery was dragged beneath the surface immediately, her scream cut short as the broadcast continued to capture bubbles and thrashing water where she had been moments before. Safety divers entered the water within seconds, but the shark had disappeared into deeper water with Valery. The live stream continued for another 47 seconds before a crew member turned it off, but by then, more than 2.3 million viewers had witnessed the attack in real time. Fragments of the wetsuit and a single torn diving fin were recovered over the next hour, but despite an intensive 3-day search involving the South African Navy and Coast Guard, Valery's remains were never found. The investigation that followed cited multiple protocol violations. The boat lacked proper shark spotting personnel, used excessive chum, and allowed swimming during known hunting activity. Van der Merwe later revealed that Valery had specifically requested the safety divers stay farther back, than standard procedure dictated to maintain the authenticity of the solo dive narrative. The tragedy sparked international debate about extreme content creation and wildlife interaction ethics. The following year, South Africa's tourism ministry implemented stricter regulations for shark diving operations, including mandatory cage use for all recreational divers and limitations on chumming practices. Valerie's parents established the Sarova Marine Safety Foundation, which funds research into shark behavior and advocates for responsible marine tourism. Her final live stream, though removed from official platforms, continues to circulate on darker corners of the internet, despite ongoing efforts to have it deleted. In a particularly grim epilogue, the energy drink company that had sponsored Valerie attempted to use modified clips from her final dive in promotional materials 6 months later, triggering public backlash and eventual bankruptcy after a successful lawsuit from the Sarova family. The incident remains one of the most publicly witnessed shark attacks in history. It is a cautionary reference in discussions about the dangers of prioritizing social media engagement over personal safety. Marine biologists point to the case when explaining that even experienced divers cannot predict the behavior of apex predators, particularly in waters altered by human feeding activities. Guadalupe Island, Mexico, 2008. Located 240 kilometers off Mexico's Baja California peninsula, Guadalupe Island emerged as a premier destination for great white shark observation in the early 2000s. The island's isolation and pristine waters created an ideal natural laboratory for studying these apex predators, with underwater visibility often exceeding 30 meters. By 2008, several specialized tour operators had established seasonal expeditions, allowing researchers and adventurous tourists to observe sharks from the presumed safety of submersible cages. Alina Mirova, a 33-year-old Ukrainian-born marine biologist with dual Canadian citizenship, has dedicated her career to changing public perceptions of sharks through documentary filmmaking. After completing her doctorate at a university in British Columbia with a thesis on predator conservation ethics, Alina has produced award-winning films showcasing shark behavior in natural contexts. Her work has been featured on international nature channels, and she earned the prestigious Oceanic Heritage Medal in 2007 for advancing marine conservation awareness. On October 23, 2008, Alina joined the research vessel Carcharodon for what was scheduled as a 14-day filming expedition. The project, funded by the Global Marine Conservation Initiative, aimed to capture unprecedented footage of great white hunting patterns for an upcoming documentary series. Expedition logs noted optimal conditions that morning: water temperature at 19 degrees Celsius, exceptional visibility and moderate current. The submersible cage deployed for the expedition had been in service for approximately 7 seasons. Maintenance records later obtained by investigators revealed that the welding along the lower port quadrant had been flagged for reinforcement during the previous year's inspection, but had received only temporary repairs due to budget constraints. The expedition leader, Dr. Magnus Thorensen, reportedly expressed concern about the cage's condition, but ultimately approved it after additional bracing was added to the upper sections. At 11:37 a.m., Alina entered the cage for her third dive of the day. 2 research assistants, Paulina Vega and Soren Lindstrom, monitored from the surface while underwater cameraman Theo Nakamura filmed from a secondary cage 5 meters away. According to the expedition protocol, small amounts of tuna chunks were dispersed to attract sharks to the vicinity, but not directly to the cages. 22 minutes into the dive, an unusually large female great white, later estimated at 5.2 meters based on video analysis, approached the primary cage. Digital logs from Alina's underwater camera recorded her excitement at capturing what she described as classic investigatory behavior as the shark made a slow, deliberate pass. The encounter changed dramatically when a larger tuna piece drifted closer to the cage than intended. The shark made a sudden, powerful turn and accelerated toward the bait. Rather than veering off as typically observed, the predator collided with the lower section of the cage precisely at the compromised weld point. The impact stress caused catastrophic structural failure, opening approximately 70 centimeters wide. Later analyzed by marine safety experts, Nakamura's footage showed the shark's momentum, carrying it partially into the cage. In the confined space, the animal thrashed violently, its jaws clamping onto Alina's torso in what experts described as a stress response rather than predatory behavior. Blood immediately clouded the water as Alina was pulled against the damaged section of the cage. Surface crew members initiated emergency protocols within seconds. Dive master Julian Cortez entered the water without protective equipment and managed to release the emergency flotation system that brought the damaged cage to the surface. Despite their rapid response, the injuries Alina sustained proved catastrophic. The medical examiner's report documented severe trauma to her vital organs and major blood vessels, indicating that death had likely occurred within moments of the initial bite. The investigation that followed identified multiple systemic failures. The cage's maintenance record revealed a pattern of postponed repairs and quick fixes that had compromised its structural integrity. The bait dispersal system also lacked sufficient directional control, allowing attractants to drift too close to the observation platforms. Perhaps most critically, the emergency response plan had not been adequately updated to address catastrophic cage failures. The incident sent shockwaves through the marine research and shark tourism industries. The Mexican government temporarily suspended all cage diving permits around Guadalupe Island while implementing new safety standards, including mandatory annual equipment certification, increased cage strength requirements, and strict limits on baiting practices. Alina's final footage, recovered from her underwater camera, contained remarkable observations about shark social dynamics that she had documented moments before the attack. Her research team made the difficult decision to include selected scientific portions in the documentary, renamed Mirova's Legacy, while withholding the tragic final moments. Her parents and colleagues established the Alina Mirova Foundation for Responsible Marine Research the following year. The organization now funds innovations in protective equipment for marine researchers and advocates for sustainable observation practices that minimize wildlife disturbance. In a poignant tribute, the research community named a newly identified great white shark observed near Guadalupe Island in 2010, Alina. The female shark, recognizable by its distinctive dorsal fin pattern, continues to be monitored as part of ongoing population studies, embodying the conservation work to which Alina had devoted her life. Progreso, Yucatan, Mexico, 2013. The coastal waters of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula had long been celebrated for their crystalline beauty and rich marine biodiversity. The small port city of Progreso, with its distinctive 7-kilometer pier stretching into the Gulf of Mexico, had transformed from a sleepy fishing village into a popular destination for ecotourism and water sports. Local maritime tradition held that these waters were sacred to ancient Maya seafarers, who performed rituals before journeys to appease the ocean deities who controlled the currents and creatures of the deep. By 2013, the annual Brazada por la Esperanza, Stroke for Hope, charity swim, had grown into a significant regional event, drawing participants from across Latin America and the United States to raise funds for children's cancer treatment. The 20-kilometer open water course paralleled the coastline, with safety boats and kayak spotters positioned regularly to monitor swimmers. Rachel Hammond, a 42-year-old triathlete and pharmaceutical executive from Boston, had registered for the event as part of her quest to complete marathon swims on every continent. The mother of 3 had discovered endurance swimming in her mid-30s as therapy for recovering from a serious car accident, and had since completed 14 major open water events. Friends described her as methodical and safety-conscious, known for extensively researching water conditions and marine life before every competition. On March 23, 2013, 217 swimmers entered the water at Progreso's eastern beach under ideal conditions. A light offshore breeze, a temperature of 23 degrees Celsius, and excellent visibility. According to the event tracking system, Rachel maintained a strong pace through the first 12 kilometers, positioning herself among the top 30 participants. Her distinctive neon green swim cap made her easily identifiable to the safety team, who monitored her from kayaks to small motorized vessels. Unknown to race organizers and participants, 3 fishing boats operating approximately 4 kilometers offshore had discarded fish entrails and processed waste into the Gulf waters for 18 hours. Local investigators later discovered that the vessels, registered to a commercial fishing operation based in Sicily, had experienced refrigeration system failures and had improperly disposed of spoiling catch rather than returning to port. Ocean current patterns had gradually shifted this biological material toward the swimming course, creating what marine biologists term a chum slick that extended invisibly beneath the surface. At the 14-kilometer marker, Rachel was positioned approximately 60 meters from the nearest safety kayak when spotter Alejandro Fuentes observed a sudden disturbance in the water behind her. Event communications logs recorded his radio alert at 11:47 a.m., reporting what he initially described as unusual water movement near participant number 142. Witnesses would later describe the attack as explosive and without warning. A large bull shark, estimated at 3.3 meters, breached the surface directly behind Rachel, striking with such force that she was pulled underwater immediately. The initial bite targeted her upper back and right shoulder with catastrophic force. Safety diver Carlos Mendoza entered the water within 40 seconds, but reported that visibility had deteriorated rapidly due to blood dispersal. Despite the quick response of 3 safety team members who reached the location within 90 seconds, Rachel had sustained injuries incompatible with survival. Medical examiner Dr. Elena Vasquez documented massive trauma to the thoracic region, with severed major blood vessels indicating that consciousness would have been lost within seconds of the initial strike. The following investigation revealed multiple contributing factors that created a perfect storm scenario. Analysis of local fishing vessel GPS data confirmed that illegal dumping had occurred along a path that intersected with currents flowing directly toward the swim course. Additionally, March represented the beginning of bull shark migration season in the Gulf, a factor that event organizers had noted in safety plans, but had considered low risk based on historical data. Perhaps most critically, interviews with local fishermen identified that the 2013 unusual bull shark behavior was observed throughout the Yucatan coast, with specimens appearing closer to shore than typically observed. Marine biologists later connected this behavioral change to unusually warm water temperatures that had altered the distribution of smaller prey fish. Local authorities immediately responded by suspending the fishing licenses of the vessels involved in the improper waste disposal and implementing stringent new regulations for all commercial fishing operations during public water events. The Yucatan Tourism Board canceled all open water swimming competitions for the remainder of the year while conducting comprehensive shark population surveys. Rachel's husband, Dr. Timothy Hammond, worked through his grief by establishing the Rachel Hammond Foundation for Water Safety. Since then, the organization has funded improved shark monitoring technology for public beaches and training programs for emergency response teams throughout Latin America. The foundation's signature achievement came in 2016 with the development of a rapid deploy underwater drone system that allows safety teams to assess subsurface conditions before and during open water events. In a solemn ceremony 1 year after the tragedy, Rachel's family scattered her ashes from Progreso's pier, honoring her love for the ocean despite its ultimate betrayal. The annual swim was reinstated in 2015 under a new format that includes mandatory enclosed swimming lanes for the full course and advanced sonar monitoring for large marine predators. Local dive operators now include Rachel's story in their safety briefings, emphasizing how even experienced swimmers must respect the unpredictable nature of the ocean environment. A small memorial plaque at the eastern beach starting point bears the inscription, "The sea gives life and demands respect," a reminder of Rachel's passion for open water and the inherent risks of entering wild marine environments. What made Rachel's case particularly notable among marine biologists was the unusual hunting behavior displayed by the bull shark. Dr. Martina Ortega studied the incident extensively for the Institute of Marine Sciences. She published a groundbreaking analysis suggesting that the shark was likely conditioned to associate human swimming patterns with feeding opportunities. The illegal dumping from fishing vessels had created what Ortega termed a behavioral bridge, a situation where normal predatory instincts were redirected toward human activity through repeated stimulus association. Her team's research revealed a troubling pattern. In the 3 months preceding the attack, at least 5 local fishing operations had routinely discarded processing waste in protected waters, often coinciding with morning hours when recreational swimmers were most active. Satellite tracking of known bull shark populations in the area showed significant shifts in their movement patterns during this period, with increased coastal activity during times that correlated with fishing vessel operations. This research ultimately contributed to Mexico's strengthened marine protection laws, which now impose penalties of up to 5 years imprisonment for commercial waste dumping in designated recreation zones. The Hammond family's advocacy work expanded beyond water safety to address the underlying socioeconomic factors contributing to the tragedy. Timothy Hammond collaborated with local fishing cooperatives to develop sustainable practices that protected marine ecosystems and human livelihoods. By 2018, the foundation had established a microloan program that helped 12 Yucatan fishing operations upgrade to modern refrigeration systems, eliminating the economic pressure to dump spoiled catch. The program also created a community-based shark monitoring network that employed former fishermen as conservation officers, transforming potential adversaries into partners for marine protection. During the 5th anniversary memorial service in 2018, Progreso's mayor announced that reported incidents of illegal dumping had decreased by 87% since these initiatives began, while sustainable fishing yields had increased through improved practices. Rachel's youngest daughter, Sophia, who had followed her mother's passion for marine conservation, unveiled a specialized drone system that would patrol the swim course during future events. Technology funded entirely by local businesses whose owners had witnessed how responsible tourism and marine protection could coexist productively. Rugged coast of San Diego, California, where the Pacific Ocean's restless waves kissed the golden shores. An extraordinary incident unfolded on May 9, 2025. This stretch of coastline had long been known for its diverse marine ecosystem, with seasonal migrations of various shark species, including the formidable great white. The waters had witnessed numerous rescue operations over decades, but none quite like what Petty Officer Nathaniel "Nate" Collins would experience that fateful morning. San Diego's maritime history stretched back centuries, from Spanish exploration to its modern significance as a naval hub. The Coast Guard station there had responded to thousands of distress calls, with their crews trained to face everything from raging storms to medical emergencies at sea. Yet nature still held surprises even for the most seasoned personnel. That morning began like many others for the crew of rescue helicopter CG 6579. The sky hung heavy with a light marine layer as Lieutenant Zachariah Ortega received the distress call at 7:38 a.m. A small fishing vessel, the Morning Light, had capsized approximately 3 miles offshore. 2 fishermen, brothers Morgan and Terrence Whitaker, were clinging to the overturned hull, their situation growing increasingly desperate as the current threatened to sweep them further from shore. The Coast Guard crew, consisting of Lieutenant Ortega as pilot, Ensign Victoria Blackwell as co-pilot, Petty Officer Nate Collins as rescue swimmer, and aviation technician Maxwell Rodriguez operating the hoist, launched immediately. As they approached the site, they spotted the capsized vessel bobbing precariously in the rolling swells. The brothers' frantic waving confirmed they were still conscious, though clearly exhausted from fighting the cold waters. Hovering 20 feet above the scene, the helicopter maintained position while Petty Officer Collins prepared for deployment. The sea below churned with debris from the fishing vessel. Bait boxes, coolers, and fishing gear spread across the surface. What the crew didn't initially realize was how this floating buffet of potential food sources had attracted predators from below. As Collins was lowered into the water, aviation technician Rodriguez noticed an unusual movement beneath the surface. A large, dark shadow circling approximately 30 yards from the capsized boat. He immediately alerted Lieutenant Ortega through the intercom system. The lieutenant acknowledged the sighting but determined they needed to proceed with the rescue, keeping a vigilant eye on the situation. Collins reached the water with practiced efficiency, swimming toward the stranded fishermen. The Whitaker brothers, seeing their rescuer approach, felt a surge of relief wash over their exhausted bodies. What happened next would be captured on the helicopter's surveillance cameras and later analyzed extensively by marine biologists across the nation. As Collins secured the first brother Morgan into the rescue basket, the dark shadow beneath the water accelerated toward the surface. Rodriguez shouted a warning as a massive great white shark, later estimated at 16 feet in length, breached the water in a spectacular display of predatory power. The massive creature launched itself partially out of the ocean, its muscular body glistening in the morning sun, reaching an estimated height of 8 feet above the waterline. Time seemed to compress for Collins as he registered the massive jaws and rows of serrated teeth, less than 15 feet from his position. The shark, likely confused by the unusual activity and vibrations from the helicopter's rotors, had investigated in the most dramatic way possible. Collins instinctively pulled the fisherman closer to himself, his heart hammering against his ribcage. Lieutenant Ortega responded instantaneously, lifting the helicopter higher while maintaining position for the hoist. The shark crashed back into the water, sending a spray of salt water into the air, and creating a wave that rocked Collins and the fisherman. Remarkably, the shark did not attack but instead disappeared into the depths, perhaps startled by the helicopter's noise and downdraft. With adrenaline coursing through his system, Collins maintained his professional composure, completing the rescue of both brothers with methodical precision. First Morgan and then Terrence were lifted to safety, followed by Collins himself. Once aboard, the reality of what had transpired hit the entire crew. They had just witnessed one of the rarest and most dangerous natural phenomena, a great white shark breaching within striking distance of humans. Upon returning to base, the crew underwent a thorough debriefing with Commander Prisha Naidu. The incident was classified as a near miss in official reports, though privately, marine biologists consulted by the Coast Guard suggested the breach was likely investigatory rather than predatory. The shark had probably been attracted by the debris and disturbance rather than targeting the humans specifically. For Petty Officer Collins, the experience served as a profound reminder of humanity's place in the natural order. Despite all their training and technology, they remained visitors in an alien world where ancient predators still reigned. In the months that followed, Collins would become an advocate for shark conservation, speaking at local schools about respecting rather than fearing these magnificent creatures. The footage of the incident, released 6 months later after careful consideration, would become an important educational tool for both Coast Guard training and marine biology programs nationwide, demonstrating the unpredictable power of nature and the importance of maintaining calm in crisis situations. The Whitaker brothers, grateful for their rescue, established a scholarship fund for future Coast Guard rescue swimmers, ensuring Collins' legacy of courage would inspire generations to come. The coastal town of Margaret River in Western Australia had long been revered among surfing enthusiasts for its powerful waves and pristine beaches. Since the 1970s, this stretch of coastline has developed a reputation that drew surfers from around the globe, despite, or perhaps because of, its isolated location nearly 300 kilometers south of Perth. What many visitors failed to appreciate, however, was that these waters were also home to one of the highest concentrations of great white sharks in the world. In 2019, these two realities collided in a way that would test the courage of one local lifeguard and forever changed the community's relationship with the ocean. Callum Thornberry had served with the Margaret River Surf Life-Saving Club for 7 years. At 29, he had become one of the most respected members of the patrol, known for his unwavering calm during emergencies and intimate knowledge of the local waters. Born to a family with 3 generations of lifeguards, Callum understood the sea's moods and dangers better than most. He had witnessed numerous shark sightings over the years, but never a direct attack, until that fateful morning of March 17th. The day began with challenging conditions. A heavy fog had settled over the coast, reducing visibility and creating an eerie atmosphere across one of the area's most popular surfing spots. Despite the limited visibility, a group of dedicated surfers had paddled out at dawn to catch the excellent swell rolling in after a recent storm. Callum had started his patrol shift early, launching the club's jet ski for a routine sweep of the area. The Western Australian government had implemented a sophisticated shark monitoring system following several fatal attacks in the region between 2011 and 2016. Part of Callum's responsibility was to check for any recent pings from tagged sharks and maintain visual surveillance of the waters. As he navigated through the mist approximately 300 meters offshore, the radio on his waterproof vest crackled with a warning. A satellite tracking system had detected a tagged great white shark moving into the bay. The notification indicated the shark was large, approximately 3.7 meters in length, and moving directly toward the area where the morning surfers were waiting for waves. Callum immediately increased speed, heading toward the group of 5 surfers who remained oblivious to the approaching predator. The fog muffled the sound of his approach, and he needed to get closer before they would hear his warnings. Through breaks in the mist, he caught glimpses of dark shapes beneath the surface, the unmistakable silhouette of a great white moving with purpose toward the dangling legs of the surfers. He pushed the jet ski to its limit, closing the distance while repeatedly sounding the craft's horn. The surfers finally noticed his approach, but their confusion about his urgent signals cost precious seconds. Callum shouted for them to return to shore immediately, his voice barely carrying over the sound of breaking waves. 4 of the surfers began paddling toward the beach, but the 5th, Jasper Kingsley, a 34-year-old visitor from Melbourne, hesitated, unwilling to abandon what had promised to be an excellent session. This momentary delay proved catastrophic. Without warning, the water beneath Jasper's board erupted. The great white shark, now confirmed to be nearly 4 meters long, surged upward with such force that both surfer and board were lifted momentarily from the water. As gravity reclaimed them, the shark's jaws clamped down on Jasper's right leg, just above the knee. The surfer's wetsuit turned dark with blood almost instantly. Callum accelerated directly toward the churning water, a maneuver that contradicted standard safety protocols but reflected his instinctive understanding that seconds would determine whether Jasper lived or died. The noise and approach of the jet ski, combined with the distinctive electrical field it generated, appeared to disorient the shark. After a terrifying moment during which Jasper was pulled beneath the surface, the predator released its grip and disappeared into deeper water. Jasper resurfaced, conscious but in shock. Callum maneuvered the jet ski alongside him, reaching down to grasp the injured surfer's wetsuit collar. With a strength born of adrenaline and training, he pulled Jasper across the back of the craft, immediately applying pressure to the wound with one hand while steering toward shore with the other. The other surfers had reached the shallows by this time, and beachgoers, alerted by the commotion, rushed to assist. Among them was Dr. Lydia Nakamura, an off-duty emergency physician who immediately took charge of Jasper's care once he reached the beach. Her quick application of improvised tourniquets likely prevented him from bleeding out before the medical helicopter arrived 15 minutes later. Jasper survived the attack but lost his leg below the knee. The shark, later identified through bite radius and tooth markings as a mature female great white, was not seen in the area again. Marine biologists speculated that the attack may have been investigatory rather than predatory, the shark tasting what it couldn't clearly see in the foggy conditions before determining that Jasper wasn't its usual prey. For Callum, the incident marked a turning point. While he had always respected the ocean's dangers, experiencing such a violent encounter firsthand left him with a deeper understanding of the fragile balance between humans and marine apex predators. In the months that followed, he worked with local authorities to improve the early warning systems and education programs for visitors to Margaret River's beaches. The town council later awarded him a medal for bravery, though Callum insisted that he had merely done what anyone would do in his position. What he didn't share publicly was how the memory of those moments, the blood in the water, the primal fear in Jasper's eyes, the sheer power of the shark, now accompanied him every time he patrolled the waters he had once navigated with carefree confidence. Jasper eventually returned to Margaret River a year later, having learned to surf again with a prosthetic leg. He sought out Callum, and the two men formed an unlikely friendship, occasionally surfing together in the calmer, shallower waters where sharks rarely ventured. Their story became something of a local legend, a testament to human resilience and a reminder that in the ocean, we are always visitors in a wilderness that demands our utmost respect. Waters off San Clemente Island, approximately 70 miles northwest of San Diego, California, had long served as the United States Navy's training ground. In 2022, these two worlds, military precision and primal nature, collided in an encounter that would shake even the most seasoned naval personnel. Lieutenant Commander Desmond Ramirez had been leading maritime security exercises for the past 3 years, training junior officers in small craft operations and coastal infiltration techniques. At 34, his reputation for thoroughness and commitment to safety protocols had earned him respect throughout the Special Warfare Command. On September 14th, he was overseeing a routine exercise involving a 5-person crew navigating a combat rubber raiding craft, CRRC, a small inflatable boat commonly used for coastal insertions. The team consisted of Ensign Joaquin Mendoza, Petty Officers First Class Tamara Washington and Kai Nguyen, and Petty Officers Second Class Bryson Holcomb and Marcus Chen. They had launched from the United States ship Comstock at 6 a.m., tasked with circumnavigating a portion of the island while practicing navigation and observation techniques in the early morning light. Weather conditions were ideal: light winds, minimal swells, and clear visibility. 2 hours into the exercise, the team had reached the northwestern tip of the island, an area known for strong currents where the deep Pacific waters meet the island's underwater shelf. Lieutenant Commander Ramirez had instructed the team to practice maintaining position in these challenging conditions, a skill critical for covert insertions. As Petty Officer Washington adjusted the engine throttle to counter a particularly strong current, the first indication of trouble came not from the water but from the sky. A juvenile bald eagle, one of several that nested on the island's cliffs, suddenly abandoned its hunting pattern and veered away from the water's surface. This behavior, what naturalists call predator avoidance, went unnoticed by the crew, a small detail that would later be considered significant in the official investigation. Moments later, the sea erupted around them. A massive splash rocked the small craft as something struck it from below with tremendous force. Petty Officer Chen, seated at the starboard bow, was thrown overboard by the impact. As the remaining crew struggled to stabilize the violently rocking boat, they caught their first glimpse of what had hit them. A great white shark estimated at nearly 16 feet in length, its dark gray dorsal fin cutting through the water as it circled back toward their position. Lieutenant Commander Ramirez immediately ordered Petty Officer Nguyen to assist Chen, who was struggling in the water approximately 5 meters from the boat. The situation deteriorated rapidly as they observed the shark's dorsal fin change direction, now moving directly toward Chen. Naval personnel were trained to maintain composure under extreme stress, but what followed tested the limits of that training. The shark approached Chen with frightening speed. Petty Officer Holcomb, reacting instinctively, grabbed a signal flare and ignited it, plunging it into the water near the shark's approach path. The bright chemical reaction and sudden plume of red smoke momentarily diverted the predator, allowing Nguyen to reach Chen and begin pulling him toward the boat. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Ramirez discovered that the impact had damaged the boat's outboard motor, which now sputtered ineffectively. Using the handheld radio, he transmitted a distress call to the United States ship Comstock, reporting their position and situation with a calm precision that belied the chaos unfolding around him. As Nguyen and Chen neared the boat, the shark returned, this time striking the inflatable craft itself. Its powerful jaws clamped onto one of the pontoons, instantly deflating it and further destabilizing the already compromised vessel. Seawater poured in as the craft listed severely to starboard. Petty Officer Washington, drawing on her extensive survival training, deployed the emergency life raft while Holcomb continued to use visual and audio deterrents to confuse the shark. With remarkable coordination, the team managed to transfer to the life raft, pulling Chen, who had suffered lacerations to his left leg from the shark's rough skin during the initial contact, aboard last. The original craft now lay half-submerged, its dark shape perhaps continuing to attract the shark's attention as it circled the area. Lieutenant Commander Ramirez maintained communication with the United States ship Comstock, which had already launched a rescue helicopter. The shark continued to investigate both the sinking craft and the life raft, occasionally bumping the latter from beneath, behavior that marine biologists would later describe as exploratory rather than overtly aggressive. 18 minutes after the initial distress call, the distinctive sound of rotor blades announced the arrival of an MH-60S Seahawk helicopter. The shark, apparently startled by the aircraft's noise and downdraft, finally retreated into deeper water. The rescue crew efficiently hoisted all 5 team members to safety, with particular urgency given to Petty Officer Chen, whose injuries, while not life-threatening, required immediate medical attention. Back aboard the United States ship Comstock, the team underwent medical evaluation and debriefing. Chen received 27 stitches for his lacerations, but suffered no permanent damage. The psychological impact, however, proved more significant. The Navy's operational psychology team was brought in to help the personnel process the encounter, recognizing that even elite military training doesn't prepare one for facing a prehistoric predator in its natural environment. The incident led to a review of training protocols in shark-prone waters. Navy consultants concluded the shark likely mistook the inflatable craft for a wounded seal, common prey for great whites in California. It was deemed a case of mistaken identity, not aggression. In response, Lieutenant Commander Ramirez pushed for marine predator awareness in coastal training. His report, praising the crew's disciplined reaction, became required reading at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center. San Clemente Island remains an active training site, now with heightened respect for the ocean's apex predators. The event stands as a reminder of nature's unpredictability and the resilience of those who face it. On May 10, 2025, the tranquil waters off Cape Town, South Africa, became the setting for one of the most terrifying shark encounters in history. The Western Cape region had long been known for its diverse marine ecosystem, where the cold Benguela Current met the warmer waters of the Indian Ocean, creating one of the world's richest feeding grounds for great white sharks. This convergence of currents had established the area as a premier diving destination and a notorious shark hotspot since the early 1990s. 7 Russian friends, Dmitry Volkovich, Alexei Kuznetsov, Igor Petrenkov, Mikhail Sorokin, Anastasia Yegorova, Vasily Morozov, and Natalia Popova, had been planning their luxury fishing expedition for months. Volkovich, a successful technology entrepreneur from Moscow, had recently purchased the sleek 65-foot yacht Morskoy Volk, Seawolf, for $900,000. The vessel boasted state-of-the-art navigation systems, luxurious cabins, and a specialized fishing platform perfect for deep-sea excursions. Their journey began from the V&A waterfront marina in Cape Town with clear skies and favorable forecasts. The group's intended destination was the nutrient-rich waters off Namibia's Skeleton Coast, approximately 800 kilometers north. This coastline had earned its ominous name from the countless shipwrecks that dotted its shores, a foreboding detail that would later seem eerily prophetic. By mid-afternoon, the yacht had reached a point roughly 40 kilometers offshore. The friends were in high spirits as they prepared their fishing gear. Kuznetsov, an experienced angler, suggested they try chumming, a fishing technique involving throwing fish parts and blood into the water to attract tuna. Despite Petrenkov expressing some reservations about the practice in these waters, the group proceeded with their plan, unaware of the danger they were creating. The first signs of trouble came when Yegorova noticed an unusually large shadow moving beneath the yacht. Before anyone could react, the massive creature, later estimated to be over 20 feet long, rammed into the vessel's port side with tremendous force. The impact sent everyone stumbling as fishing equipment clattered across the deck. Morozov, who had maritime experience, immediately recognized they were dealing with an exceptionally large great white shark. The group watched in horror as the predator circled their yacht, its dorsal fin cutting through the water's surface. The shark, seemingly agitated by the chumming and the yacht's engine vibrations, began exhibiting increasingly aggressive behavior. What followed was described by survivors as something out of a nightmare. The great white again launched itself at the yacht with even greater force. The fiberglass hull cracked audibly under the impact. Sorokin rushed to assess the damage while Volkovich attempted to start the engines to move away from the danger zone. Before they could escape, the shark executed a powerful breach directly beneath the stern. The yacht's rear section splintered under the impact, and the vessel began taking on water rapidly. The sudden tilt threw Popova, Yegorova, and Kuznetsov overboard, directly into the shark-infested waters. Panic ensued as those aboard watched helplessly while their friends struggled in the water. The shark immediately changed focus, circling the 3 swimmers with terrifying precision. Kuznetsov, attempting to reach a floating piece of debris, became the first victim. The great white attacked him from below, its massive jaws clamping around his lower body. His screams were cut short as he was pulled underwater momentarily before resurfacing with catastrophic injuries to his legs and torso. Morozov and Petrenkov, showing remarkable courage, threw a life ring toward their friends while Volkovich prepared the emergency life raft. Yegorova managed to help the severely injured Kuznetsov stay afloat, while Popova swam desperately toward the sinking yacht. In a second attack, the shark struck again, grazing Popova's side with its razor-sharp teeth. Despite her injuries, she reached the yacht where her friends pulled her aboard. Yegorova and Kuznetsov remained vulnerable in the water as the yacht continued sinking. After several agonizing minutes and the shark continuing to circle menacingly, both were finally dragged to safety. With the yacht rapidly disappearing beneath the waves, Volkovich activated their emergency distress beacon. The 7 friends crowded into the life raft, administering rudimentary first aid to Kuznetsov and Popova with limited supplies. For 14 harrowing hours, they drifted at the mercy of the currents, keeping constant watch for the return of their attacker. Rescue finally came in the form of the South African Coast Guard vessel Cape Agulhas, which had picked up their distress signal. All 7 friends were transported to a hospital in Cape Town, where Kuznetsov and Popova were immediately taken into emergency surgery. The aftermath of the incident sent shockwaves through the international maritime community. Marine biologists noted that such deliberate attacks on vessels by great whites were extremely rare, suggesting this particular shark's behavior might have been territorial or triggered by the chumming activities. While all 7 friends survived the ordeal, both Kuznetsov and Popova remained in critical condition for weeks afterward, requiring multiple reconstructive surgeries. The psychological trauma affected all members of the group profoundly. Volkovich later established a foundation dedicated to shark conservation and safe boating practices, turning their near-tragic experience into an opportunity for education about respectful coexistence with marine predators. In the summer of 2021, the typically serene waters off Monterey Bay, California, became the stage for an extraordinary encounter between human ingenuity and nature's apex predator. With its diverse marine ecosystem supported by the nutrient-rich California current, the California coastline has long attracted wildlife enthusiasts and researchers. This particular stretch of shoreline had witnessed increasingly great white shark activity over the preceding decade, primarily due to the growing seal and sea lion populations that thrived in the protected marine sanctuaries, established in the late 1990s. Lisa Harper, a 34-year-old environmental journalist for the prestigious Pacific Conservation Quarterly, had built her reputation on immersive reporting that brought readers face-to-face with the wonders and challenges of marine ecosystems. With 3 international awards for environmental journalism, Harper approached each assignment with meticulous preparation and a deep respect for the natural world she documented. On July 17th, Harper embarked on what should have been a routine kayaking expedition to gather footage for her upcoming feature on kelp forest restoration. And the morning had begun with perfect conditions. Minimal wind, clear visibility, and a gentle swell that made paddling her specialized carbon fiber kayak almost effortless. The vessel, painted a distinctive coral orange for high visibility, was equipped with underwater cameras mounted on extendable booms for capturing marine life without disrupting natural behaviors. Harper had paddled approximately 2 miles offshore, well beyond the kelp beds that fringed the coastline. The water depth had increased to nearly 80 feet, and the seafloor's features were visible through her polarized glasses. According to her later account, she had just activated her underwater recording equipment when she felt an unusual vibration transmitted through the kayak's hull. The first indication of danger came not as a dramatic fin slicing through the water, but as a massive shadow materializing beneath her craft. With her extensive experience documenting marine life, Harper immediately recognized the distinctive torpedo-shaped silhouette of a great white shark. Initial estimates based on her footage later confirmed the animal measured approximately 16 feet in length, well above the average size for the species in this region. The shark circled beneath Harper's kayak for several minutes, exhibiting what marine biologists would later describe as investigatory behavior. Maintaining remarkable composure, Harper continued filming the encounter while slowly preparing to withdraw. As a precautionary measure, she activated her emergency GPS beacon and radioed her shore contact to report the shark's presence. The situation escalated without warning. After completing several wide circles around the kayak, the shark suddenly changed its approach angle and accelerated directly toward the craft. The first impact struck the kayak's port side with tremendous force, nearly capsizing it. Harper managed to stabilize the vessel using her paddle, but the shark quickly circled back for a second approach. The second ram struck the kayak's underside, launching it partially out of the water and throwing Harper sideways. As she struggled to regain her position, the shark executed a third, more powerful strike that flipped the kayak completely, plunging Harper into the water barely 10 feet from the circling predator. Finding herself in the water with a great white shark actively investigating her kayak, Harper later reported that her training instantly overrode her panic. Rather than attempting to swim, which might trigger the shark's predatory instinct, She immediately grabbed her kayak paddle, which had fortuitously remained within reach. Holding the paddle horizontally before her, she created a barrier between herself and the approaching shark. The great white made its first direct approach toward Harper with terrifying speed. Using the paddle as a defensive tool, she deflected the shark's snout away from her body. The impact force nearly wrenched the paddle from her grip, but she maintained her hold. For the next several minutes, a bizarre duel ensued as the shark circled and approached repeatedly, each time meeting the obstacle of the paddle. During one particularly close pass, the shark's sandpaper-like skin scraped against Harper's exposed legs, removing layers of skin in what divers call shark burn. Another approach resulted in the shark's teeth scraping against her wetsuit boots, slicing through the neoprene but miraculously missing her flesh. After what Harper estimated to be 15 minutes but was later confirmed by her emergency beacon data to be just over 8 minutes, salvation appeared in the form of the commercial fishing vessel Northern Light. Captain Terrence Walsh and his two-person crew had received the emergency broadcast and diverted their course to investigate. The sound of their approaching engine and the disruption caused by their hull seemed to dissuade the shark, which disappeared into deeper water. Walsh and his crew skillfully maneuvered alongside Harper, pulling her aboard and her damaged kayak. Though bleeding from multiple abrasions and in the early stages of hypothermia, Harper's injuries were remarkably minor given the circumstances. More impressively, her underwater cameras continued recording throughout the encounter, capturing unprecedented footage of great white shark investigatory and testing behavior. In the aftermath of the incident, Harper spent 2 days under observation at a community hospital in Monterey Peninsula before being released. The scientific community's interest in her footage led to a collaboration with marine biologists, who analyzed the shark's behavior patterns. Their findings suggested that the shark had been exhibiting what they termed exploratory aggression, a behavior pattern rarely documented in wild great whites. Despite her harrowing experience, Harper returned to marine journalism within months, though she adopted enhanced safety protocols, including never kayaking alone and always operating within the range of support vessels. The documentary produced from her footage, The Testing Ground, won critical acclaim at the International Wildlife Film Festival and significantly advanced public understanding of shark behavior. Local maritime authorities implemented new advisory protocols for the area, including increased aerial surveillance during peak shark season and improved emergency response coordination. Harper's experience, while traumatic, ultimately contributed valuable data to shark researchers and potentially saved lives through the enhanced safety measures it inspired. In August 2017, the typically idyllic waters surrounding California's Channel Islands became the setting for a harrowing encounter that would forever change the life of 32-year-old Alexander Hartwick Daniels. The Channel Islands, an archipelago of 8 islands off the Southern California coast, had been designated as a national marine sanctuary in 1980, protecting the remarkably diverse ecosystem that flourishes in the confluence of warm and cold ocean currents. This unique environment attracted thousands of tourists annually, and various marine predators, including the region's most formidable hunter, the great white shark. Daniels, a software engineer from San Francisco, passionate about extreme sports, had organized the weekend excursion to celebrate his recent promotion. 4 close friends joined him: Trevor Wilson, Naomi Fletcher, Marcus Chen, and Riley Espinoza. The group had rented high-performance jet skis from Channel Islands Adventure Outfitters in Ventura Harbor. Having completed the required safety training and signed the extensive liability waivers that specifically mentioned the presence of marine predators in the area, the morning of August 12th greeted the adventurers with exceptional conditions: calm seas, clear skies, and uncharacteristically warm water temperatures hovering around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The group departed from Ventura Harbor aboard the outfitter's transport vessel, which ferried them and their rented jet skis to the eastern side of Santa Cruz Island, approximately 20 miles offshore. Their planned route would take them along the island's dramatic coastline, through the protected waters of Scorpion Anchorage, and toward the remote eastern tip of the island. The friends enjoyed perfect conditions for nearly 2 hours, racing their machines across the glassy surface and marveling at the rugged island scenery. An amateur marine biologist, Fletcher spotted several pods of dolphins and even a distant humpback whale breach. The group maintained radio contact with each other and the outfitter's base station, providing regular position updates as required by their rental agreement. At approximately 2:15 p.m., the group entered a picturesque cove near Potato Harbor. According to later accounts from his friends, Daniels had accelerated ahead of the group, executing a series of challenging maneuvers that showcased his considerable skill. His jet ski caught an unexpected wave at an awkward angle as he attempted a sharp turn at high speed. The machine bucked violently, throwing Daniels clear of the seat and into the water with enough force to momentarily stun him. Wilson and Chen, who witnessed the accident, immediately rushed toward their friend's position. Fletcher radioed their coordinates to the outfitter's base station as a precautionary measure. Though there was no indication of danger, Daniels had surfaced and was treading water beside his still-running jet ski, appearing dazed but conscious. What happened next occurred with such shocking speed that the witnesses initially struggled to process it. A massive dark shape materialized directly beneath Daniels, moving with incredible velocity from the deeper water. Before anyone could shout a warning, a great white shark estimated at 18 feet in length erupted from the surface, its jaws clamping around Daniels' right leg with catastrophic force. Daniels' scream of pain and terror was cut short as the shark pulled him underwater in what marine biologists call an initial strike dive, a hunting behavior where the predator immediately drags its prey to depth to prevent escape. For approximately 8 seconds, Daniels remained completely submerged. When he resurfaced, the water around him had already begun turning crimson. According to statements later provided by Wilson, Daniels was conscious and frantically fighting back, repeatedly striking the shark's snout and eyes while struggling to remain at the surface. In an extraordinary display of courage, both Wilson and Chen maneuvered their jet skis directly toward the ongoing attack. Chen positioned his craft between Daniels and deeper water while Wilson approached from the other side. The noise and water turbulence from the jet ski's engines created what marine rescue experts would later describe as an effective shark deterrent environment, momentarily confusing the predator. This brief window of opportunity allowed Daniels, despite his severe injuries, to begin swimming toward Wilson's jet ski. The shark, after circling wide, began another approach. Chen, showing remarkable presence of mind, revved his engine and directed water spray toward the approaching predator, while Fletcher and Espinoza arrived to assist with the rescue effort, with the shark temporarily distracted by Chen's jet ski. Wilson managed to grasp Daniels' arms and, with assistance from Espinoza, heave him onto the back of his watercraft. When Daniels was clear of the water, Chen throttled to maximum speed, creating a defensive screen of noise and turbulence, while the others retreated toward shallower water. Once in the relative safety of Scorpion anchorage, the full extent of Daniels' injuries became apparent. The shark's initial bite had created devastating damage to his right leg from mid-thigh to knee, with multiple deep lacerations exposing muscle and bone. Using the first aid kit from their emergency packs, Fletcher applied pressure bandages while Espinoza used his belt as an improvised tourniquet to stem the alarming blood loss. The group's emergency call triggered an impressive response coordination. A National Park Service patrol boat responded within 15 minutes, transferring Daniels to their vessel where a wilderness first responder provided more advanced care. A U.S. Coast Guard helicopter with a paramedic aboard was dispatched from Point Mugu Naval Air Station, arriving approximately 28 minutes after the initial attack. Daniels was airlifted directly to a medical center's trauma unit in Ventura County, where a surgical team stood ready. He underwent 7 hours of emergency surgery to repair severed blood vessels, stabilize fractured femur and tibia bones, and close multiple wound tracks. Medical reports later confirmed that the shark's teeth had missed his femoral artery by less than 2 centimeters, a margin that meant the difference between life and death. The physical recovery process proved grueling. Daniels required 3 additional reconstructive surgeries over the following months, followed by intensive physical therapy. After 9 months of rehabilitation, he regained the ability to walk with assistance, though with a pronounced limp that doctors indicated would likely be permanent. The psychological impact proved equally challenging, with Daniels experiencing frequent nightmares and developing a severe phobia of open water that required specialized therapy. In an unexpected turn, Daniels channeled his traumatic experience into advocacy work. 14 months after the attack, he established the Pacific Predator Awareness Foundation, which promotes educational initiatives to reduce shark-human interactions and support research into non-lethal shark deterrent technologies. Rather than advocating fear or culling programs, Daniels emphasizes coexistence strategies and marine conservation efforts. The incident resulted in several practical changes to jet ski tours in the Channel Islands. Rental companies now provide personal shark deterrent devices to all clients, implement stricter buddy system protocols, and require enhanced safety briefings that address appropriate responses to marine predator encounters. Daniels' experience, while tragic for him, potentially saved others from similar fates through the improved safety measures it inspired.